Welcome to Rooted to Thrive, conversations to elevate our humanity. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson Ansari, Professor P for short. This is your podcast sanctuary for cultivating mindsets and skills to elevate our shared humanity. We're taking a deep dive into practical strategies to evolve as anti-racist, culturally competent, and inclusive individuals and leaders. In each episode, we're bringing you real-world examples and actionable takeaways. We're going to talk about personal growth, fostering connection, and creating positive change that dismantles systemic barriers and creates environments where all of us are valued, empowered, and activate our collective power. This is Rooted to Thrive. Hi there, and welcome back to everyone joining us on Rooted to Thrive, conversations that elevate our humanity podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson Ansari, aka Professor P. Today, we have Dr. Alissa Gardenhire, president of ADG Group, LLC, a consulting firm for philanthropy. She's an entrepreneur, educator, and researcher who has committed more than 30 years to addressing root causes of societal challenges in her work. And let me tell you, I am so excited because Alissa and I met just recently, right? We were connected by a mutual acquaintance who she worked with and I went to high school with.
Kidding, I didn't even know that.
Yes. And we immediately clicked. I think we set up a 15-minute call, and an hour later, we were trying to get ourselves off that phone. So, Alissa,
It's okay.
let me tell you, I woke up this morning in such good spirits. And one of the reasons was because I get to spend some more time talking with you
Oh,
about our mutual passions and our insights about how people can contribute to a more just society. So tell us a little bit about how you're doing today.
I'm doing wonderfully today. It's sunny in Michigan where I am now, and
Yes.
I feel engaged with the things that matter to me, and that is so important because it's not always that way.
Yeah.
But right now, where I am with business and my family and all sorts of stuff sort of falling together nicely, I feel great. Thanks for asking.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm excited to have you speak on the topic today, centered leadership, foundations for transformative change. So to get started, can you tell us a little bit about what centered leadership means and how that elevates our humanity?
Absolutely. So centered leadership really, I can tell a long story. I won't tell that long of a story.
Okay.
But in a funny way, it started with heartbreak for me, which is
Mm.
interesting. So I definitely have lived a life where, as a Black woman, I have gone through relatively smoothly. I'll say that. I feel like there definitely are and have been challenges, probably that I can tie to my race or gender, but I pretty much have gone through life doing what I want to do, the ways that I wanted to do them. And I was raised very intentionally by parents who made sure that I had confidence to do that. So I'd say I've gone very smoothly through a lot of these 50-ish years of life. But about a year ago, I had a huge heartbreak. It was just like a devastating thing that devastated so many things, and it made me really mad in a way that I hadn't been feeling in a long time. And it made me really look at the circumstances that women live with
Mhm.
in our culture and our society, where we are not centered
Mm.
and we don't center ourselves. And I said, that's nonsense because this whole society can't operate without us.
Yes, that's
From
right.
the basics of reproduction to what we do in terms of domestic work and caregiving, and not to be adult, but other kinds of labors that we put in, all those things matter, and we
Yes.
generally give those away for free, and our society cannot function with us, but it erases that, it
Mm,
diminishes it. And I said, this is nonsense, because I've been a self-directed person my whole life.
mm,
I should be able to determine what I want to do with my life, let alone what they're trying to control with our bodies now.
mm,
Is just going crazy in the wrong direction. And so I said, well, I want to empower women more. And so I gave public talks about the future of women about a year ago. And this was a departure. So a year ago, I owned a learning center in New Jersey where I did math and English tutoring for kids K through 12. I was starting to, this was around the time I had the idea to open a retreat center for women as well.
mhm.
All these things were sort of threaded together, but I have to laugh. I have like two jokes, like thanks heartbreak, and then I used to say thanks racism, because my
Yeah.
parents met volunteering for CORE in the 60s. And so if there weren't like racial discrimination and segregation and all that stuff to fight, like I wouldn't exist, because that's where they met.
Wow.
All that to say, so I started thinking about disadvantage in different ways. I think professionally before that, I had thought a lot about economic disparities and poverty, and wanted to, in a lot of my work professionally, when I worked for a think tank in New York, and my dissertation work when I was in graduate school, was around poverty. So poverty was more salient to me than race or gender.
Okay.
But then I came to like really start thinking about women and how that's not fair, and that we should be able to create a society that works for us. And that
Mhm.
was interesting to me. And then, and that really started with, women need to be able to look out of their own eyes at the world and say, does this work for me?
Mm,
And so centered leadership started with that, where I was like, well, because I generally over these 50 plus years have been an empowered person. Yeah, well, what are we doing here? What are
mm,
we doing? Like, what level of fed? I was at the level of fed upness. That's one of my new words. I was at the level of fed upness. I said, oh no, we need to burn the whole thing down if we can't figure out how to make this better, or even better, let's try and make something better. So that's
mhm,
where centered leadership started. And then
mhm,
it's evolved um, over the course of a year to where it is now, where I'm really focusing on supporting philanthropic organizations to apply centered leadership principles,
mhm,
which don't just have to do, which begin with what I said, which was like underlying everybody needs to be looking at the world through their own eyes, but
mhm.
then also sort of pull some of the threads of my career together, which is qualitative research. So, can we ask questions that get us to the root cause of the problems we're trying to solve socially?
Right.
Because I think we spend a lot of time trying to put a band aid on a gunshot wound,
Mm,
and we're just trying to, we focus a lot on symptoms, and they're so in our face, it makes sense. But better use of space and time and resources is really to figure out, like, okay, what's behind this, what's behind this. And so asking why enough times till you get to the root cause is the other part of what we do with center leadership.
yes. Okay, wonderful. And how does that help us elevate our humanity? Right.
Well, I mean, fundamentally, what I said about women, Black people,
Yes.
people of color in general, we are all equally endowed human beings, in my view. We all came from wherever we came from, wherever you believe you came
Mhm.
from before you got here, with the same rights to live our lives out fully. My
Yes.
dad, who passed away in 2010, but was a huge influence on me, used to say to me my whole life, refuse to live your life on other people's terms.
Mm,
Something I heard since I was a little kid. His
yeah.
other thing was walk in like you own the place. So those two
Mhm.
things like really sort of guided my development, my identity development. And, you know, if you're, and I think women and people of color, Black people in particular in America, live a lot of our lives on other people's terms. We really do. And so that's the opposite of elevating our humanity. So my aim is to do the opposite and help us elevate that and claim that for ourselves.
Mhm. Okay, wonderful.
Mm.
So you gave us some insight into centered leadership.
Mm.
And from our previous discussions, I know that you had you were talking about trust and connection as elements that lead to that. Can you talk more about that?
I sure can. I'm happy to. I think it's important. So I
Mhm.
have all this training to be analytical and to say, well, let's just ask the right questions. And then I also have this feeling about everybody's humanity, right?
Yes.
Um, but I also understand how people work because I've worked in organizations a long time. I've worked with lots of different groups of people, and I've observed people too. So that's, as a qualitative researcher, you have to like talk to, interview, but also observe people sort of in their natural environments. And so I'm always paying attention to what people are talking about. And so what I identified is a core thing. So even before we're asking questions why, even before we're talking about racism, sexism, or whatever that might be getting in the way, we have to be able to establish some trust and connection. So
Mhm.
connection is vital in that it's the thing that can help you see the other
Yes.
person, as a human being, because you and they share something in common.
Mhm.
And from that, trust can be built. But without those two, we're just going to continue skating on the surface and not
Mhm.
getting to the heart of the matter and not really creating transformational change, which is what I think we all want to do.
Yeah, yes, yes. And I'm glad you said that. That's where we connect, right? Like, so I mean, we both are passionate about the societal challenges that we have,
Yeah.
passionate about people, and especially people who are in these marginalized groups, right? That are constantly under this hidden veil of, it's not really hidden, but
Mm-hmm.
this hidden veil of oppression, right? For many different, this applies to so many different groups.
Right.
Um, we share that. I have my work focuses on relationship. I work with those in education. In the education sector, we're there to serve, right? Well, so is the philanthropic sector, but it's real clear, right? And you would think that in education, we would center people, and we still don't.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And there are reasons for that. So for me,
Mhm.
like when I use centered leadership thinking,
Okay.
I want to say, why is that, right? It
Mhm.
seems logical that that would be the case. But if you look at education, then you have to look at it as a business because it's
Yeah.
what it is.
Mhm.
And then you have to look at who makes money in that. And then you
Mhm.
have to look at the companies that sell products to school districts and schools and and those things, and then how they really operate, right?
Mhm.
So they all have lobbying groups, they all influence policy. All those things are behind what actually can happen in schools, in instruction, in teaching,
Mhm. Mhm.
but they also get in the way. And then also structures around budget and time and unions and all these things also get in the way of even establishing connection between staff people.
That's right.
Hmm.
That's right. Connection between staff, connection between educators and their students.
Absolutely.
That's critical to me.
Yeah.
I I too had privileges, right? Well, mine, I have a lot more contradictions in my story.
Okay.
In the educational space, the learning environment, pretty much 100% educational privilege.
Hmm.
And I want other people to have that.
Sure.
So I looked at, what did I receive, why was I receiving it? Now some of that, right, so pre-K to 12, some of the privileges I received, like the benefit of the doubt, the I- people differentiated, what we call differentiate today,
Mm.
was me being put in a corner to read book reports because I was moving faster
Yep.
than the other children, right? But people were doing what they knew how to do at that time, being tapped on the shoulder
Mm-hmm.
for opportunities. And I was asking why back then, like, why just me? or
Mhm.
why just this small group of students that we've now put in this track of the, like something equivalent to an honors track,
Mhm.
right?
Gifted and talented at my school. Yeah, I
Right.
remember.
It's the gifted, right. It's the gifted program. I don't
Mhm.
even know if they called it that. We had this special progress
In
course
California, that's what
in
we
New
called
York.
it. We
Okay.
called it GATE, Gifted and Talented Education. Yeah,
Yes,
that
yes.
was what I was in.
Yeah. Now, some of those privileges came because of our proximity to whiteness, the way we
100%.
spoke,
Hmm.
right? And we liked school the way it was delivered. We gave
Yeah,
it back the way it was expected. There was some level of compliance
absolutely.
within that as well. I want I want educators in particular, leaders in education, to see that most of their preparation to do their work excluded something really important. And it's not everyone. We try to train people and talk to them in graduate programs and undergrad about, understanding the cultures of other children, of their children or their potential children.
Mm-hmm.
How can you really know or connect to them if you don't know yourself?
Your own culture and what you're.
Yes,
Can I tell?
yes,
Can I tell a quick short thing? There's a
yes.
clips going around from Everybody Loves Chris. Everybody Hates Chris. Is that
Chris,
that show?
yeah, I think so.
So he has this teacher, this white teacher who's teaching in
Mhm,
his district, who's
mm,
notoriously racist, right? And she keeps on saying, well, he's a crack baby and he was this and he's lying about having two parents who are married who open their own. And it is the most offensive
mhm,
yet humorous clip to talk
mhm.
about how teachers or people can view other people and lump
Yes.
them together without knowing a single thing about them
Mhm.
and how problematic that's extraordinarily problematic. So I'm right with you.
Right. It's extraordinarily problematic, really, for anyone, but particularly when you're working with children, youth, young adults, right, who are developing their sense of who they are. They're
Absolutely.
impacted by that.
Hmm.
Yes. And,
Yes.
and that's where I talk about the privilege, right? It was different for me in that regard in educational spaces.
Hmm.
I wasn't treated that way.
Yep.
And so, but I noticed when other people weren't. I actually have a story about a young time when I was in a fight. I was in a um, that I'm pretty sure I started.
Okay. Happens.
This was in junior high school, so this was grade 7 and 9. I was skipped the eighth grade.
Oh,
So yeah, this was like 2 years in junior high school. And I was in that top track. We
mhm.
had three top tracks and I was in the top of the three.
Wow.
And I was in this fight with a young lady who was not in any of the honors tracks.
Okay.
Yeah, she was treated as if she started it.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Like
Hmm.
I said that I didn't start it and I was believed.
They believed you. Yep.
Yes,
Hmm.
right. And we've just become more punitive over the years.
It's wild the way that kids are punished in schools now. It's
Yes,
criminal. It's
right.
funny you said that because I was at a football game last night. I had to do the chain gang. It's just like,
Mhm.
okay, here we go. Too many references. But anyway, I had to like move the chains along the side because
Okay.
they needed an extra parent. And because I'm new to Michigan, I don't know the dynamics between these schools.
Mm.
But this school was seemingly an all white school. They seem to have a couple black kids on the team. And our team is mixed more. Um, and in the course of that conversation, a parent who went from the opposing school was chatting with me, and she was pointing out one of the black boys on the team, and she said he's always so kind and so polite, but he's gotten in so much trouble. He's been suspended. He got suspended for half a year and blah blah blah. And she said I talked to the parents once, and I said he's so polite. He always says yes ma'am, no ma'am to me and whatever. And the parents were like, our child, but because he has a reputation, but he also finds himself in an environment that
Right.
is very challenging. Because I saw one of our coaches later who was talking about the game that my son's getting ready to play in today,
Hmm.
against the school in previous years, and he said one year they all bleached their all the students bleached their hair blonde and came in Heiling Hitler. And that's the context for that school.
Mm.
And to be a Black child in that environment, even if you are like us, privileged and ready and responsive to the educational environment, it has to be incredibly challenging. Someone had to notice that those kids were bleaching their hair before game day, because they didn't bleach their hair 5 minutes before the game. Someone had to notice these things were happening, and there had to be some environment that made the children think that that was going to be okay.
Right. Right.
And they're still playing now. They didn't get suspended. Nothing, as far as I know.
And
So,
right.
yeah. So,
Yes.
there's work for us to do. I'll say that.
Lots of work to do. Yeah. Well, and I want to take this back to centered leadership, right? We're talking about how we view people, right? Oftentimes we are placing blame or looking in the wrong direction. That's what right? That's what I think we both
say more. Say more.
So
I
that
think I have something to say. Go ahead.
People are looking in the wrong direction. So when we're talking about, like I just said, around the climate in the school, they're looking at individuals
Yes.
and saying, it's them. They're blaming the child for their failures as opposed to let's look at ourselves, right? And I know, just how the brain works, and we're not going to readily be very introspective. Our egos are going to want us to not to be a bit in denial. But the reality is we are failing individuals if we don't look at the entire community.
I agree with you. I agree. I think I have something to add. It's not directly there, but I told you I started doing YouTube videos recently. And so I had this idea that I wanted to write about, but I felt tired today, so I don't feel like writing anything. So I'm just talking to this camera. And it's about white men. I said, on white men have been in my mind for a while, because I think one of the challenges for people of color and for women as well is we need to right size them in our minds.
Okay, say more.
Yeah. So because I grew up in a almost all white community, like I used to say, like only Black people I knew growing up were in my family. Not quite true, but kind of. I grew up in Northern California, and I was the only Black kid in my school, elementary school, almost the whole time I was there. But because I had these parents who were very intentional, and because I can compete with them, I never felt anything but fine there. It didn't bother me. And they're just white folks. They're just people even more. And I think that's the point that I want to make, is because I've seen them up close, because I've been in their homes, because they've been in my homes, because I've been around them a lot. And at the same time, not diminished my own Blackness in any way in those circumstances of my early development. And since I just see them, white people, as people. Now, as a monolith, if I lump them together, then there's a lot of problematic stuff that can come forth. White people are also conditioned by white supremacy. It's just the other side of it. And because it feels like they're winning, they don't realize how much of their humanity they lose in the need to conform firmly to the stipulations of white supremacy, and how much that takes from them. Like I can see that, and I think that's hard for people of color, Black people, to see in particular, because it feels so personal. Racism feels so personal. The thing that I've been bringing up recently has been race. We have to stop taking racism so personally and look at it for what it is, which is a tool.
It's a tool that works on all of us.
All of us.
Right. But
everybody.
But it works on all of us in different ways.
Differently. Absolutely.
Right. The skin color, your culture, your background. And that's where I was coming from around the lack of critical consciousness comes from the fact that, one of the main social institutions that trains us to be the adults that we become has been used as a tool
Oh,
to
100%.
keep all of us actually, from the information that we need,
Yep.
right? The people, some people are living it so they get it. And
Hmm.
that's why it feels personal,
Yeah.
meaning that, we're all living it.
Right.
We all were taught white supremacy.
Absolutely.
Yes. And we operate from that. And
Yep.
again, people aren't looking, I feel like people aren't looking in the right direction. So I love the way that you put it, that we all need to be reoriented.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
there's certainly lots of people who fall into category of whiteness who may never be open to this.
Mhm.
And there certainly are Black people who are the same, who may
Mhm.
never be open to, I can't. Like I had conversations with people this week on LinkedIn who said, I can't heal. I said, we're going to have to figure out how to heal together.
Mhm.
Really want this to change. And she said, I can't heal with the oppressor. I cannot. I don't care.
But that's also because of a lack of understanding of how the supremacy of whiteness
Mhm.
operates, right?
Absolutely.
Like it's operating in some people's ignorance.
It does. It flourishes there.
Yeah, people are acting as though they're not giving people the benefit of the doubt. That's the
Absolutely.
bottom line. They're not assuming goodwill. And it's not logical to me
Mhm.
that there are all of these people that wake up in the morning and it's like,
Right.
I'm going to make somebody else's life miserable.
So funny you say that because I had a similar thought. I was thinking, this is terrible, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's fun. I was like, is racism really fun? Is it like
Well,
really like amusing to just like wake up and just be horrible? Like, what is that? Like,
right.
why would you all want to dye your hair blonde and say Heil Hitler? Like, why
Mhm.
is that fun? Like, I want to talk to white people about this. I want to say,
Mhm.
like, can we talk about this?
Right.
Because is it like a power thing? Is it a just being a jackass? Excuse my language thing. I
Right.
don't know.
Hmm.
But some people, there's something in there that gives people something.
Right.
So I want to hold them accountable for that stuff too, while keeping myself open to what did you mean by that? Or
Yeah.
let's explore that further or that
That's
kind of
right.
stuff. Yeah.
Right.
I think we have to do both somehow.
Yeah. And I think that, there's more avoidant behavior than, hateful behavior.
Hmm.
Yeah, right. Like you said, people don't have the incentive
Hmm.
to change.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I think the many people who are out here now, especially now we're connecting through social media and, there are less barriers to communicating. I feel
Hmm.
like the way people are communicating with one another is not helping,
No, I
right?
agree.
They're not approaching another human being with, like I said, the benefit of the doubt. Like,
And you get in an echo chamber because the algorithms work in certain ways.
well,
So
yeah,
you just hear the
right,
people say the things that you say. So I listened
yes,
to like five people
mm,
trauma dumping about what happened, five Black people trauma dumping about what happened to them at work. And now I get 20 posts
about
about people trauma dumping about what's happening to
that's
them at
right,
work.
that's right,
So
and
that,
yeah, and
that makes it worse too.
yes, and then here we have people who must lead in
Mhm.
workplaces and other places, right? And navigate all of this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's what we're seeing is the antithesis of connection,
Mhm. No,
right?
100%. And thank you for bringing us back there because I think trauma dumping and having safe spaces for ourselves to talk about what we experience and all those things are super critical. But the thing I keep harping on is now what? Okay, yes. When
Mhm.
I used to be more flippant about racism and stuff, I was like, racism is like air. I don't talk about air either. I just keep doing whatever I'm doing. I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Right.
But I want to get to solutions because I don't have grandchildren. Like that's my baby when he was a baby, and that's him now. But ultimately, I'm going to have some grandchildren. I don't want them to do this at all.
Right.
Love them to not ever have to think about this stuff.
Mhm.
Let's never have a conversation about this.
Right.
or at least my great grandchildren, to like be able to say, I just lived my life as a human being. I lived my life based on who I am, and I'm not like some airy fairy dreamy person. I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
serious. Like, I don't want them to have to live this at all. I did a little simulation with ChatGPT the other day. I said, if let's go back to the emancipation.
Mhm.
If America had kept its promise, 40 acres and a mule, and left Black people alone, what would happen? And we went through this. I made ChatGPT go through this whole simulation, and it was a completely different reality. It was a completely different reality
Yeah.
where our entire GDP was bigger. What
Mhm.
we produced as a culture was bigger. The loss of lives was much less. The brilliant solutions that have been killed with people who have been killed along the way to all this, all sorts of different, like a completely different world. And I said to
Mhm.
myself, every step along the way were individuals making choices
Yes.
led to this, that led to that, that led to that. Groups
Yeah.
of people and individuals making choices that led to this and that. And so I say that to say that what we have now was not inevitable, but were choices. And so from here, when I say, okay, now what? I want us to recognize that we have choices that we can be making now to create a different future
That's right.
for ourselves and for future generations. And
Yes.
people to feel empowered in that.
Right. That's the transformative change.
Mhm.
And so with that in mind, let's start getting granular
Okay.
about practical ways we can establish connection
Mhm.
and trust.
Sure. So it's probably around 10 years ago, I
Mhm.
discovered there was this thing out called the 36 questions for love
Mm.
and love. Do you remember that? So these questions came out. They were all in the newspaper. I used to find these questions. And so you could go through this set of questions created by a social psychologist up in upstate New York. Stony Brook, I think, is where he was. And he created these questions to help people connect. And I said, well, I don't care about people falling in love. That's their business. But I like people to connect. And so I actually wrote him an email and I said, I'm interested in these questions, but I wonder if they could work in a non romantic setting to help people
Mm.
connect. And
Mm.
he wrote me, and I said, and if they can I use them? And he said, yes, you can use them in any way you want. Go ahead. And yes, absolutely, they can help people connect in a non-romantic way. Don't have them do the eye gazing part at the end. So there's
Okay.
an end where you go through the questions and then you look in each other's eyes for 2 minutes without speaking or something. And that's the thing that flips the love switch, evidently. He said it's unethical because you just don't know what people's real situations are when you're pairing up single strangers and that kind of stuff. So I started doing workshops,
Mm.
started doing connection workshops, and I was scaling it to see before and after, pre and post the questions, where people were in terms of how connected they felt to the other person. So these were in settings where a big group of new people were coming into a company or a business or an organization, and we need to figure out how to get them connected quickly. And that was mostly the scenarios that I did these, and I did them like in some like nonprofits and other groups like social service groups and stuff who had volunteers and other people they wanted to connect to each other. And so I paired the people up, and sometimes we had odd numbers. So sometimes there would be three, but mostly pairs of people who didn't know each other. And before, pre the question asking, on a scale of 1 to 7, the connection ratings were about 1.5. So some people maybe kind of knew each other or they'd seen each other around or whatever, but low, right? And then we only had 45 minutes. So nobody got through all 36 questions in 45 minutes. But there are these so each set of, there's 3 sets of 12 questions, and someone reads a question and you both answer back and forth and you sort of go through. So I let the things run for 45 minutes, and then we came back and people rated again, and the rating jumped to almost 6
Oh, wow.
in 45 minutes. So for me, those connection workshops are super powerful. and an amazing tool that I discovered to be able to help people connect. I'd say in general, anything like that, that doesn't feel, I think the challenge is people sometimes feel forced into those kinds of things when a business is telling you, okay, we're going to do an icebreaker, we're going to do a whatever. They just feel cheesy. This,
Yeah.
so far in my experience, this has never come off as cheesy. They really
Oh,
get
good.
into it and they like it.
It's
But,
meaningful.
and then I think that leaders have to model this connection, which means they have to be vulnerable and have to actually be human beings when they show up to work, as opposed to dictators or whatever else might happen, sort of in a workspace or in a collaborative environment. I think that modeling makes a big difference because it's the kind of thing. I guess the third element of trust and connection is also safety.
Safety.
Yeah. So being able to feel like it's safe for me to be myself in this place,
Mhm.
I think is important. And I feel like I see so much of the opposite now
Mm.
because people are saying these companies just fire us, or the companies are saying these people just quit and blah, blah, blah. We're going back and forth with that kind of stuff. But that shows me that all those three things that we just talked about are missing.
Mhm.
And you don't have to stay. I don't, business is business.
Right.
Loyalty, it's not your family. It's not, you shouldn't go down that weird road that a lot of companies went down for a long time. Oh, it's your family. You need to work here and live here and everything. That's not true. But you can be respectful and connected to your colleagues. And it
Yes,
should be safe for you to be able to do that
that's
without
right.
jeopardizing everything.
Right. So how might, give a vivid picture of how a leader
Mhm.
might show up uh, vulnerable or to model vulnerability
Mhm.
and the need or desire to connect, right? Like, so if how is that illustrated in, say, a single leader's in how a single leader might operate, right? Like, so it's not a workshop.
Mhm. Right. But
How
just in
might a,
day to
yeah,
day.
how might a single leader
I
show?
think
Mhm.
I think it has, let's play with this together. But I
Okay.
think it uh, the leader has to be confident in themselves. So they
Okay.
have to have done some internal work to understand that they are safe and it
Okay.
is safe for
Mhm.
them to do that. And to have confidence enough in themselves to say, I can be a human being in this place
Mhm.
and still lead and
Right.
still be valid in my leadership. And that partially, I think, takes a leap. Like you
Mhm.
just have to believe that that's true and that's what you're going to create as the leader. I think that's the
Yes.
first step.
Yes. So
Mhm.
since we're playing around with it, can I jump in?
Sure,
I
please.
was I was wondering about the fact that many people who, we've both been leaders in workplaces.
Mhm.
I wonder if that challenge comes up for people to connect, be vulnerable, have that confidence in themselves because of their idea of what it means to be a leader.
Oh,
So,
there you go.
right? So,
Hmm.
what does it mean to be a leader? Means that you're all knowing, you're the problem solver, you're the right,
Hmm.
and that gets in the way.
100%.
Yeah,
You have
it
to
gets
say
in the
that.
way. You don't have to know everything. You're a human being. You cannot possibly know everything. If you're a great leader and you know how to hire, you're working with people who know things that you don't know,
You hope so.
right?
You hope so. Or you just might as well do the whole thing yourself.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I
No,
think it's people's perspective of what it means to be a leader that gets in the way.
yeah,
And
I think that's a brilliant observation, and that maybe some of the work that we need to do with people is to help them define what that is.
right,
That's inclusive of vulnerability and confidence
yes,
and all the bits and pieces that need to be in place.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so when there are people showing up to work saying, or on social media saying they don't feel seen and heard and valued at
Mm-hmm.
work, you know, how might I, as a leader,
Mm-hmm.
respond differently if I want people to feel seen, heard, valued, like
How
they
do,
belong?
right. Well, if we took the work mantle off and just said in life,
Yeah.
you see and value people, and they may not. That might
Mm.
be their thing. So that's something to explore on
Mhm.
one hand. But I think for me, like when I think about, I've applied for a couple jobs recently in some leadership positions, executive director type jobs. And I said, I don't know anything about this place. I have to go in here and listen. I have to go if I'm in this position, my starting place has to be to listen to the people who are here.
Yes.
And I think that probably is one of the most important initial steps when people want to be seen, they need to be heard. I think seen means heard, I guess is what I
Mm.
think what that
Okay.
means.
And do you have any, your own personal examples of how you've shown up as a centered leader?
I think in the 6 years that I owned the Learning Center, I had a number of different staff.
Okay.
And one in particular started with me as an SAT student, if you can believe it. So
Mm.
he started with me in my very first months open with his twin brother and they had just arrived from Ghana, had finished high school in a very competitive high school there, but didn't know anything about the American system. And so we did some test prep with them early on. And then they came back and worked for me as teaching assistants. I think I had to feel comfortable to share some challenges that I had. I didn't share them with him necessarily when he was a teaching assistant because that's not appropriate. He needed leadership at that point. That was just like, let me guide you to the things that you need to do to be effective in this work. He had a natural affinity for working with kids, which was helpful, but over the course of time, things happened in my life. Like I had to leave sometime. I had to take a trip unexpectedly to deal with a family issue. And I said, I need you to watch the shop for me. And I needed to still be here when I get back.
Right.
And this is what's going on with me that makes this necessary for me to take off right now to go do this thing. And he understood that and took that in. And I think similarly, like if he lived with his grandmother and if something came up in that case where he just needed to be able to take care of family or take a trip back he hadn't been back to Ghana in years and he wanted to take a trip back home and it was like in our teaching schedule, he needs to be able to tell me, I haven't seen my mom in 4 years, I need to go home to see her. Okay, let me figure out coverage for your thing. That's not your job to thank you for telling me. I get that. um and I'm not a big crier at work, but sometimes some things would just get up to here with me. And it was up to a point sometimes where I had to say this after the kids are gone, after the parents are gone, and
Hmm.
they were closing up the center to say, I got this stuff going on. And it's an it's not easy to do that as the boss, as the leader. It's not easy because I don't want him to, I don't really think he would think less of me, but I don't want him to feel uncomfortable or
Hmm.
anything like that and be inappropriate in what I'm sharing. But at the same time, I'm a person and I
Yes.
sort of had to recognize that in myself. And here's a person who has been a colleague of mine for a long time, who works for me, but is a colleague who I respect and appreciate his perspective. And I think also something that happened a lot in that business was problem solving along with my staff.
Hmm.
And so I didn't just come in necessarily with dictates all the time, but I say, we have this thing going on. Have you guys seen it?
Okay.
Okay. Let's
Hmm.
sit down and can we sit down and figure out what are some things we can do to help solve this problem that we're seeing with
Hmm.
students or with our processes or with whatever. So I think it's a combination of just vulnerability and willingness to be a human being and share some of your challenges or some of your joys, like things that were going well, but also respecting the ability of other people who you work with to be partners in problem solving. I think for me,
Yes.
in terms of personal example, I think those were some things that I did.
I agree 100%.
Mm.
Think about it. Can we always come up with the best solution alone?
Mm-mm. Right.
There are other people in the day to day. Yes, in the
They're
day
in
to
there too.
day, they're the experts.
And they see it from a different perspective than I do.
Exactly.
If I wasn't in the classrooms all the time, I wasn't always in the classrooms because my job wasn't to be in the classrooms. My job was to be out with the parents and answering questions and bringing in business and doing the stuff to get everybody a paycheck every couple of weeks.
Right.
So I wasn't necessarily, I mean, I went in, I supported and solved, helped them and did stuff that I needed to, but they're seeing things differently. So I'm like, bring it to me. Something not working, let me know because we want this to work. And I also understood as a business owner that I couldn't run that business without them.
Yeah, that's right. And you need all of those perspectives, right? To see the whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it made a difference. We were very
Yes.
successful, 5-star rated on Google, long time, long client retention, all kinds of stuff that made it satisfying. Yeah,
Excellent, Alissa. Oh, and then you had to move because
I
I,
did.
we want those kinds of things to tutoring services. We want that to continue and thrive.
Oh, I know. I was like,
Sell the model, sell the whatever your model is to people.
yeah, it can in the future, luckily, but it's
Mhm.
just I think the funny thing about me is I do eventually get shiny object syndrome. So I'm like, what else do I want to do?
Yeah, yeah.
I got one life. We
I
take on
hear
the
you.
challenge.
I hear you. We have
So
that in common as well.
it was okay timing. It was okay timing for that.
Well,
I
I want to
definitely make
thank
it work.
you.
Oh,
Oops.
go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again and again and again. It's so wonderful talking to you. I could talk to you for hours,
The
hours and
same way.
hours and hours. Would you like to share any final advice that you would give to someone looking to improve, as in their anti-racist, culturally competent, or inclusive practices? And or any resources? Are there any resources, books, courses, organizations, anything that you would recommend for them to continue on this journey?
I'd say do your internal work.
No.
So make sure that you are clued in with yourself about who you are and what you're bringing and what you want. I would say ask why as much as possible. So center leadership has four main pillars, which
Mhm.
are inquiry, intention, imagination, and impact. And so along those four lines, make sure that you're asking questions, you're setting out your own goals for whatever you're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
Use your imagination, play with ChatGPT, ask it some funky questions. It's fun. You can do that. It might get you to think differently than you can, or talk to your people about your ideas that are different. And then be determined to make a difference. And that's really what impact is. So I guess I started calling myself the impact whisperer recently because
Mhm.
life is too short to be working on stuff that doesn't make a difference.
Mm,
So,
yes,
yeah.
indeed. Oh, that is wonderful. On that note, I want to thank you for being so generous with your time and your expertise. Uh, how can people find you after this?
The easiest way to find me right now is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So it's Alissa Gardenhire, spelled funny, Alissa Gardenhire. I think it might say Dr. Alissa Gardenhire. But you can find me on LinkedIn. That's
Yeah.
the easiest way. Maybe put a link in the
And we will
description
put
or
that in the show
something.
notes. Yeah,
Yeah,
we will
that's the
put
easiest way. And I'm happy to talk to people about these ideas. I love to talk about this stuff. I love to be supportive. If you think that you might want to have me come in and do a keynote or lead a facilitated discussion or workshop on any of this stuff with your organization, I think especially in philanthropy, but philanthropy and nonprofits, I'm here for that. That's what I'm here to do.
excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you.
Oh, my
See,
pleasure.
this is why I woke up in good spirits today. Yes.
Oh,
I want to thank you and
oh,
thank everyone who stopped by. Please leave a comment, subscribe, share this episode. And thank you again, yes, for listening to Rooted to Thrive.